Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Cop Talk. I'm Kevin Schroeder, your host. I'm here with my co-host, Captain Ed Mamet. Say hello, Ed.
Hello, WABC listeners. Today we have a very, very interesting person who has agreed to give us his time, and we really appreciate it.
So today's guest on Cop Talk is Dominic Carter. Dominic, welcome.
It's so great to be here with you guys, and in my book, both of you are absolute legends.
Thank you. So for our audience, Dominic Carter, which you probably, I'm sure, know, but if you don't, he's a New York treasure. From a rough childhood in the Bronx to the top ranks of broadcast journalism, Dominic has been and covered it all. He's our colleague. He's our colleague here at WABC Radio, and we're thrilled to have him with us. Dominic, welcome to Cop Talk.
Thank you. Cop Talk is a podcast that I really believe that everyone should listen to because you guys bring the experience that we need to get this city back in the right direction. We all know what it is now, and you've paid your dues plus some. And so that's why I say that I'm sitting here with two legends. And so thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Talk about your journey from the housing projects in the Bronx to your heights of journalism today.
Well, one of the reasons why I wanted to be here on Cop Talk is because, plain and simple, without New York City police officers, I wouldn't be alive. It really is that simple. Growing up in the Bronx, I'm a kid of the city, grew up poor, on welfare, mentally ill mother, no father in the picture. Every obstacle you can imagine I had. But there's one magic piece of the puzzle that was in my side, that was on my side, rather, I should say. And that is a New York City police officer. We called him Coach Bill. And Coach Bill was a one-man example of how to improve police-community relations. Coach Bill, we didn't look at him as white. He was just different. And so Coach Bill, you know, when you're a kid growing up, you don't understand the sacrifices that adults are making to be there with you. And so Coach Bill was a community police officer. He would do his shift, and then he would come to the kids of 365 East 184th Street in the Bronx, and he would get us to play football, and he saved my life. And so through WABC, I was able to recapture my youth with him, and this guy's amazing. So this is just a couple of years ago, and he was upset that he couldn't save all of us, because the truth is, all of us kids from that community, and it actually happened, many went to prison, many went to the graveyard, but because of Coach Bill, I stand before you today. And that is a New York City police officer who happens to be white. All of this talk about racial tensions and racial troubles, and the man stepped up in my life.
That's a great story. What precinct was Coach Bill from? That's
a great question. I'm not exactly sure, so I don't want to speculate. But he has reached out to me, and you know, we did talk, and it's remarkable. Wow. You know, because when you're a kid, you don't realize. All you want to do is play football. You don't realize that Coach Bill has to raise the money for you to get uniforms. You don't realize Coach Bill has to raise money to give you a trophy at the end of the year. You don't pay attention to those things. But the man saved my life. He really did. And so I'm not sure. He worked out of the Bronx. I have talked to him, and I can never be thankful enough to him or to police officers. The other day, I happened to be at Shea Stadium, right? A couple came up to me. They say hello, the friendliest people in the world. We've got to support our police because you guys, you may be retired now, but to a degree, you're still on the front line because you're still giving back to the city in terms of role models as broadcasters with your podcast, a very popular podcast, Cop Talk, I might point out. So I'm just very thankful, extremely thankful, as a matter of fact, for law enforcement.
Dominic, let's talk about your mother's illness. What impact has it had on your career and your life?
My mother's mental illness has defined my life, period. So I went from, and thank you for the question, I went from Do I hide my mother's mental illness all my life? Do I keep this as a skeleton within myself? Or do I reveal very embarrassing personal details? So my mother was a chronic paranoid schizophrenic. And that means that you hear voices. I know you guys know from law enforcement because you had to deal with it on the job. She heard voices. And some of those voices told her to kill me as a toddler. And she planned on doing it. And that's why she was hospitalized. And a couple of times I was hospitalized for being brutally beaten by her. But I don't blame her because she was as much a victim as I was. And I was taken from her custody as a toddler and placed in ACS. It was called Children's Services back then. But she was hospitalized on major psychiatric medications, hospitalized at Mount Sinai, Bellevue, Pilgrim State, Rockland State, hospitals in Georgia. So it has been the defining moment in my life. But I really do believe, gentlemen, that something that doesn't kill us, it really makes us stronger. So by finally forgiving my mother, I disliked my mother for many, many years because of what happened. And by finally forgiving her, no matter what success, so here's what happened, guys. I've had this enormous career as a journalist, right? But no matter what, it was like it rained every day of my life. It was like an 800-pound weight on my back in terms of my upbringing. And it was only after I forgave my mother, I wish I had did it while she was still alive, it was only after I forgave her that I became free myself. And so now I'm able to truly enjoy talking to you guys, to you two, to two legends. I'm able to truly enjoy the fresh air. I'm able to truly enjoy my life.
I mean, you do a great job, and
well, thank
just to
you.
let you know, NYPD does love you and does listen to your show on WABC Radio.
Thank you.
All
Thank
the
you.
time. Dominic, you're also with the PAL. The PAL played a big part of your life as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, I was a member of the PAL too. Duncan Center on the west side of Manhattan. I know you were up in the Bronx with the PAL, and let's talk about the PAL. How it affected your life.
And the owner of the radio station runs the executive director, right, of PAL.
That's right.
John Katzmatidis.
He sure is. So the highlight of my PAL career is I made the citywide chess team. And we played the championship at the Duncan Center. So I was a little boy, and we lost, but that's okay. Because of PAL, because of the Police Athletic League, again, police officers, it's how I got exposed to media. It's how I'm doing what I'm doing today. So I'm a little kid in the Bronx, again, 365 East 184th Street, right? And my grandmother, who's raising me, because my mother is ill, in and out of psychiatric institutions. And so my grandmother and my aunt are raising me. And my grandmother didn't have much. But I like to say about my grandmother, she had a PhD in terms of loving me because she never gave up on me. And she constantly said my grandbaby's going to be somebody. So she didn't have the resources. So at the time, it was a satellite center in the building where I lived, the Police Athletic League. They were about to start breaking ground on the Webster Center, which I now believe is like 30 years old. But anyway, so it was a satellite center in the building that I lived. And considering that she didn't have any money, she sent me to PAL, and it kept me off the streets, one. Two, they fed us, gave us snacks to kids that don't have anything to eat. It means the world. Two, we saw positive role models, police officers. I didn't have role models because my dad wasn't in my life. At age 8 or 7 came my first exposure to television, to media, because of the Police Athletic League. At the time, there was and I know you guys know it, there was a wildly popular kids show called Wonderama, hosted by Bob McAllister. And he would say, well, that's really good news. I'm happy to say I got good news today. Well, have you heard any good news today? Today, I want to hear what you have to say. Just wait till I get to the count of 3 and tell me all the good news you have for me. 1, 2, 3. And so, you know, it was that and the 10 p.m. Channel 5 news that would scare the hell out of me, because it would say, it's 10 p.m. Yes. Do you know where your children are? And I would go, oh, you know. But so there were tickets to Wonderama, and they picked the Police Athletic League. They picked X amount of kids from each center, and I was one of the kids. And they said, you're going to be on the television show Wonderama. And so we arrive at the Channel 5 studios, and in walks Bob McAllister, and I'm like, a legend, right? And so he was really cool, really friendly, and I got to be one of the contestants actually on the show. Don't ask me how, but they picked me. I really believe that my honest belief about all these things that have happened in my life is that I used to feel that God had forgotten me, and I didn't realize that God was there every step of the way. So how did a kid from the Bronx, get to be selected as a contestant on Wonderama? So it was me and these 2 young ladies, and we had to get on the floor on a rug and push a peanut, and we were racing against other kids, and we had to push the peanut with our nose. And so but it's funny how life works. That was my first experience with all the lights, with the cameras, with TV, and thus look at what I'm doing for a living. And so I just want to make this one point about PAL. So when I was at New York 1, I always would try and have the PAL kids come to try and do the same thing that was done for me. And so one day they said, the executive director at the time, they said, we were done, and I was tired, and I got to get ready for the broadcast that night. And they said, we want you to ride in the van back with us to the Webster Center. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so tired. And okay, but you can't disappoint the kids. So I get in the van and we go back to the Webster Center. And we arrive at the Webster Center, and there's a DJ and like 300 kids, and I didn't know anything. And all of a sudden, they start playing the song "Welcome Back" to Welcome Back Carter, the TV show. Right. And all the kids are holding up neon signs, and I get emotional now even thinking about it. And the neon sign said, "Welcome home, Mr. Carter." And it was just, it was one of the highlights of my life, to be welcomed back and to see those kids. And I got emotional. And I was like, okay, you got to be strong. And I was just boo-hoo-hoo in front of the kids. And they were like, what's wrong? What's wrong? And, I was just, I tried to come up with an excuse. But when you've lived the life that I have, and then you've made it out, and now you're coming back, and you see the young, innocent children, and then you think about the people in your life. So, like, I didn't work with you guys in your professional careers, but to know the heart and soul of New York City police officers is to know that you, men and women, will give your life at the drop of a dime. Think about that for a second. At the drop of a dime. And now we got these animals out on the street acting like they've got no damn sense. And the police are handcuffed and can't do their jobs, and you're losing your immunity. You're losing this, losing that, losing this, and it's disgusting.
It is. It is. It's a shame. I always say, how worse can it get? It's got to get better at some point.
It's got to get better for the officers, but for the people of New York.
Right. Absolutely.
Because if you're handcuffed, you can't do your jobs.
Right. And most people in these neighborhoods in New York City, the 5 boroughs, they want the police there.
Of course they do. That's one of the biggest myths that the media pushes. That, racism. No. When somebody's breaking into your home, you don't say, oh, it's a white police officer. You say, thank God the police are here to deal with this situation. Right. And the police officer doesn't say, oh, that's a black person, so we're not going to respond. No.
Right.
You come running through the door to help people, and sometimes you catch a bullet and lose your life. Do you have that incident that occurred up in Harlem a few years ago? The call with those two cops,
Sure.
and the guy was in the mother and son, and he had put himself in the back bedroom, and the officers there trying to help, and he set them up, and they walked through the door, and boom.
Right, 3-2 precinct. Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Exactly.
Great. So at this time, I just have to take a moment to thank our sponsor, Good Greek Moving and Storage. Good Greek Moving and Storage has been named National Mover of the Year and the most referred moving company in the U.S. Spiro Georgitakis, CEO and founder, was also a police officer, so he knows the importance of safety and the risk of moving. All of his movers are screened, drug tested to ensure our safety. His movers are professionally trained at the Good Greek Academy to learn how to wrap, pack, unpack, load, unload your precious belongings for a safe trip to your new home. Good Greek is your total relocation company that will help you find a home, sell a home, get insurance, transport your car, take your junk and move you. They are your one-stop shop for all your relocation needs. Good Greek Moving and Storage is also the official movers of 18 colleges and major league sports teams in the state of Florida. So whether it's a move across the town or across the country, trust America's best movers, Good Greek. Schedule your move today at goodgreek.com. Dominic, what is some of your most memorable moments as a journalist? Interviews?
I'm blessed in terms, I've had a lot, but I don't know if it's the same thing like for you, Ed, in terms of what policing and so on. But I will say this, wait, can I flip? Can you guys tell me what has been one of your careers, and then I'll tell you my career. Can I know you guys are asking the question, but I'm curious, seriously.
Well, all right. I did just 3 months short of 40 years in the department.
40 years.
Right.
Thank you.
I came out when I was 23, and I don't want to say how old I am, but I'm older than you think. And
40 years. What made you do 40 years?
well,
Almost
I had to
40
get out
years.
at 63, it's
Right.
mandatory.
Right.
So I did 39 years, 9 months, and 6 days.
Wow.
I figured it was time to go. I saw things change.
So clearly you love the job.
Yes, I would have stayed forever. You know, as a captain, it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. Most of my career was in the detective bureau, so I got to see the worst side of life. That's one thing about police. We used to call it the greatest show on earth, but you see a lot of tragedy, you know, and you see a lot of things that are wonderful. You see the gamut of life, and I don't regret what I did. My mother wanted me to be a doctor, but I decided to become a cop.
Wow.
Well, I'm Jewish. You know, all Jewish mothers want their kids to be doctors or lawyers.
Well, thank you for your service. And, you know, one of the stories, and I want you, Kevin, to tell me your big moment, but one of the things that, one of the stories I didn't enjoy covering over the year, and then I'll tell you my highlights, because it breaks my heart, police suicides. And more has to be done to help officers in trouble. Because the fact is, every officer out there, the department talks a good game of help being available. But if you come forward and say you need help, chances are you're going to lose your gun. You're going to lose your overtime. You may lose your assignment. You may be transferred somewhere else. The department is evolving, but more must be done to help police officers in crisis from the bad things that you guys see almost every day. Kevin, I want to hear the big point of your career, and then I'll answer the question.
Dominic, that's a very good point. Everyone seems to overlook that, and people speak about it, but it's a real problem in regards to suicide prevention with the NYPD, as well as law enforcement throughout the country. I did 28 years on the police department.
28?
28.
Wow.
I started as a uniform cop, and I went to narcotics, was promoted detective.
How hard was narcotics?
Narcotics was interesting.
Did you do any other undercover work?
No, not undercover. I was an investigator.
Okay.
I had undercovers that I worked with.
Okay.
But I worked in Washington Heights as well as Brooklyn North,
Wow.
South. So some busy areas.
And working in Washington Heights, that can go left at any point. in terms
Yes.
of negative.
Right. Anytime, anywhere it could go left, but absolutely, absolutely. Especially back then in the early 90s, it was busy, in these areas I'm speaking about with the drug movement. And then I was promoted detective, and I went to the Midtown North Detective Squad for 16 years, and that's where I retired out of. And I was also an elected delegate for the union, for the Detective Endowment Association.
Wow.
So thank you. So that was an interesting job too. Protecting the detectives' rights.
Which
all the
is
false
necessary.
allegations. Absolutely, because many. I wish the police department, when someone makes a false allegation and they put a cop through the ringer, and for a year they're on a sideline, rubber gun squad as they call it, and their family has to go through all this.
Yep.
But then they find out the allegation is bullshit.
Oh, well,
And
okay.
That's okay.
Go back to work.
Exactly, which is ridiculous. I think they should
a
really,
year of your life, your family's life, the embarrassment to your family,
Right.
your children,
Exactly.
and oftentimes over some low life drug dealer. Or I was about to. I'm not referring to Mr. Floyd, George Floyd, as a low life, but I honestly feel out of Minneapolis it's unfortunate what happened to him.
Sure,
but there's a question of whether the knee was actually on the neck or whether it was on the back. And all I can tell you is that, because I have to be honest, at the end of the day, he was nobody to look up to in terms of being a role model for the community. That's part of the problem that we have now. On top of that, when you look at the fact that those 4 cops were railroaded, and they're in jail right now, their lives are ruined.
right.
And so you've both had a long career. So now my turn to answer the question. I've done things like, and it's all about the power of I can, of believing in yourself that anything is possible. So I was, when Nelson Mandela, I guess that's the crowning achievement. When he came to New York, it was, I think, 1990. Dinkins was in office for 7 months, and there were 15,000 journalists that wanted the Nelson Mandela interview. And there were 2 that got it. At the time, Ted Koppel was larger than life as the host of Nightline. He did one interview, I did the other.
Wow.
And so
Awesome.
It was very humbling for a public school kid with a public school education, myself, and an education at the State University of New York graduate school in journalism at the Newhouse School. But, every obstacle you could think of, I've had to deal with. But I guess interviewing the president of Mexico, Vicente Fox, interviewing John Cardinal O'Connor, interviewing Bill and Hillary Clinton. There have been a lot.
Wow.
Caroline Kennedy, I never thought that I would sit down with American royalty and have the opportunity to interview her. And I have to be honest, guys, I had a lot of compassion for her because people critique and nitpick and, they were like, she's not ready for prime time. She was running for the Senate. She only did 1 interview, and it was with me. And the tabloids were nipping at her, and I was just like, wow, this has got to be a rough life to live. And so with the Mandela interview, it was amazing because we were at Gracie Mansion, and I kid you not, guys, just like I'm talking to you right now. So I'm waiting for Mandela to walk into the room. There are State Department agents everywhere and details. And I mean, all the NYPD motorcycles, the entire thing. It seemed like the world stopped. So I'm at Gracie Mansion. I'm sitting there waiting for him to walk into the room. And I'm looking at the door handle. And I kid you not, like a devil appeared on my left shoulder. And the devil said, "What are you doing? You can't do this. You're going to embarrass yourself. You're about to interview Nelson Mandela. Get up and leave the room. You grew up from nothing." And I get also another highlight, appearing on Face the Nation. I've appeared on the CNNs, right, the Fox News channels, the MSNBC. But the bad devil said, "You can't do this. You can't do it. Get up and leave." And then, I kid you not, a good angel. The same thing happened with Face the Nation. A good angel said, "You got this. You can do it. You can do it." And then the door turned, and in walked Nelson Mandela. And this generation of these kids that are coming up now, they probably don't even know who he is. But so I get the most information for people when we're sitting down talking right now, before the interview starts. And I said, Mr. Mandela, can I ask you a question? And he had this beautiful dialect and beautiful skin, like copper skin. And he said, yes, young man. And I said, Mr. Mandela, you've done 25 years in prison, and all you had to do was renounce the ANC, and they would have let you out. Now, remember, he was about to go on and become the president of South Africa, maybe a year or two later. And he taught me a story about life. He started laughing. He said, young man, for me to be angry at the people that put me in jail, I would be giving them my power. And I thought about what he said. And I said to myself, you don't have the right to ever be angry again a day in your life. So I've been blessed, guys. I've had and you know what's funny? The reason why I asked you guys about your careers, because when you're caught up in it, when you're doing it, and I'm still doing it. But and also I forgot but let me make this point. When you're caught up in it, you don't look at yourself as helping to make history. You're just getting through it. So that's why I asked you guys, because I'm sure in your long, illustrious careers, you didn't look at it that way. You don't get a chance to stop and look at it and really reflect until years later. And so as the host, as a moderator, I have did debates for mayor between Michael Bloomberg and Bill Thompson. And that was fun, but it was also very a lot of pressure, because each campaign, New York One had put me up in a hotel away so that because the whole city was waiting for this, so that no one could know where I was except for the producers. And I had a private area, but the campaigns, they found me, and they're trying to, it's like a baseball umpire. They're trying to get in your head for once the live debate starts. So I did that. I also did the debate with Hillary Clinton, where she announced, and it's funny because when we were on the plane, it was up in Rochester, New York, the debate where she announced against John Spencer, who had been the mayor of Yonkers, that she was deliberating running for president. We all knew she was going to run. And I had seen her in Los Angeles at the DNC a month or two prior. And I guess another highlight, I've never been on Air Force One, but another highlight of my career is I have been a guest at the White House at the invitation of the Clintons. Nice,
nice. Dominic, unfortunately, we're running out of time. I know you have to get going. We thank you for being here today, and we'd love to have you back on.
Hey, but there's nothing I would love more than being with you guys. Both of you guys are legends. I really appreciate what you're doing. I think this podcast is one of the hottest podcasts that's actually saying something, right? So everybody has a podcast saying absolutely nothing. You guys have paid your dues. You guys are out there in the community, still in retirement. Do you know how many times I see this man at a community event, and he's always trying to help, and he's like, yes. Are you ever negative?
Sometimes.
I've never seen you negative.
Sometimes he yells at me because he's a captain. I'm only a detective. He pulls that management string.
And so I would love to come back. I really would. Anytime you guys want to do this again, because we haven't even scratched the surface with what needs to be discussed. There's only one thing, only one request that I have. Only one request that I have. The moment that we're done with the podcast right now, I want a picture with two legends.
Love that.
That's the only request that I have. Thank you for having me.
It's an honor to have you.
I'll come back to Cop Talk whenever you guys invite me.
I have one final question. Are you often mistaken for Errol Lewis?
No, Errol Lewis is often mistaken for me.
There you go.
And the reason being is because I'm the one, I don't mean to put it this way, I'm the one that put New York One on the map. Right. And people, here's what they do say. They come up to me today and they say, hey, are you still on New York One? And this is 15 years later, you know. And so Errol Lewis, I wish him all the luck in the world, but no, it's the other way around. He gets asked if he's Dominic Carter.
Okay.
So I like it, Dominic. Dominic Carter, thank you for being our guest today on Cop Talk. Folks, if you like what you hear, please subscribe to Cop Talk, and you can follow us on Twitter at Cop Talk WABC. That's at Cop Talk WABC. Until next time, God bless you, God bless America, and God bless law enforcement throughout the world. Thank you.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
Thank you, Dominic.
Thank you. Great.
Hey, it's the Good Greek Spiro, and I have some exciting news. Good Greek has been awarded National Mover of the Year. You've trusted the Good Greek for decades with your family's moving and storage needs. Now Good Greek is proud to be the nation's top mover. So when it's time for you to move across town or across the country, trust America's best mover, Good Greek. Go to goodgreek.com for Good Greek, the National Mover of the Year.
Good Greek Moving and Storage, your superhero movers.